Hi, welcome to a brand new day. Today you're going to learn how to build web apps with Python. Now, just a quick recap of yesterday. So yesterday we finished with our graphical user interface. This was a desktop program. Today you will learn how to write web apps which run on browsers. So this is what we built yesterday. So just quickly, that's our code. So you learned a ton of features, and now these features are somehow used over and over again with other types of programs as well. You sometimes have to do some tweaks, so you have to use other libraries. So we use Simple GUI for this. Today we're going to use Streamlit, which makes web apps, data apps, apps with plots in them, etc. Now, web apps tend to be more popular and they are gaining popularity when compared to desktop GUI apps, such as the one we built yesterday. And no matter if you want to become a data scientist or a web developer, or you want to automate things with Python, sooner or later you're going to need to build a web app. So it's good to know how to build them, and that is exactly what I want to show you today. So let's get ready and I'll see you in the next videos. Hey, this is Ardit, your instructor. I'm very excited to teach you today how to create this web app with Python. So far in the course, we built a command line interface and also a desktop graphical user interface for our to-do app. So today you're going to learn how to build a web interface. So that is a web app. The users can just visit the URL of your web app and they can use your app. Definitely web apps are the future and also the present, so they are taking over desktop applications because web apps are easier to maintain for programmers, but also they are more modern and also more practical to be used by users. So if you want to create a graphical user interface, you have the option of a desktop graphical user interface or the option of a web graphical user interface. So this is also referred to as a GUI, but it's a web GUI. Although the term GUI is mostly used for desktop GUIs. And these things, such as this app here, is a web app. So let's learn how to create this web app. First, let me demonstrate you how the app works. So the user has a list of existing to-dos. These to-dos come from that same to-dos.txt file. So we are reusing the backend of our program because we did create a good design for our program, so we can extend it now. So this is how the app works. The user can click on a checkbox to mark a to-do item as complete. For example, send a mail to Mira. And that to-do is removed from the list. The user can also add new to-dos. Buy grocery, press enter, and that to-do is added to the to-do lists in here. So it's a very minimalistic to-do app, but it's excellent to introduce you to how to make web apps with Python. Without further ado, let's go back to PyCharm and create a new Python file. Let's call this just web, add it to Git. So I got that window which allows me to add that file to the Git version control. Otherwise, you can right-click over the file and go to Git and do a manual add here. So press add, and that is added to the Git local repository. Then do import streamlit SST. So we're going to use the Streamlit library to create web apps. Streamlit is a brand new library that is taking over and it's becoming really popular because it's easy to create web apps. It's very intuitive to use it. And it also integrates very well with graphs, so you can create data dashboards, data apps where you show graphs and widgets like sliders and text boxes and buttons which interact with your graphs. And it's also very easy to deploy your apps, so you can make your apps public very easily so that everyone can use them. So first you need to install Streamlit. You can hover your mouse here and go to install package Streamlit, or you can go to Python packages here and search for Streamlit, and that package should be the one we need. So press on install. The package was installed successfully on my computer, so I can go ahead and use Streamlit now. If you do st.title and just say my to-do app, those two lines of code should be able to create a web app which you can view on your computer. So for now we can only view the web app on our own computer, on our browser. It's not public yet. So let's view the web app. To view it, you need to run the script, but you cannot run the script as you do with other scripts. So if I do this, it's not going to work, and I get this warning that to view a Streamlit app on a browser, I should run it with this command. So that's Streamlit run, and that's the path to my web.py file. Although I can just use the file name directly because web.py is located in the project directory, in the main directory, just here under app1. So to run it, you go to terminal and then you do Streamlit run web.py. Press enter, and if it works, you should be able to see this output. So that is the URL of your app. You can click it and that should open the browser. Now that's the app, so that's the URL, localhost colon 8502. In my case, that's the URL. So that one in here. So all we did is we added like a title here. And to do that, all we had to do was that. So the title function returns a title instance. If you want a subheader, you just add it using that subheader function. And you go here, you simply refresh the page. You don't need to rerun the app, the script. You just go back to your browser and refresh the page. For simple text, you do st.write. This app is to increase your productivity. Again, you go back to your browser, reload your browser, and there we go. So that's the text. Now, how do we add those checkboxes? Well, to create a single checkbox, you use st.checkbox, and here you put the label of the checkbox, for example, buy grocery. Reload, and there we go. So that's a checkbox which you can click. And of course you can add more, so if you duplicate that, and add a new label to the second checkbox, you get two checkboxes. Right, but how do we get the actual to-dos from our todos.txt file? Well, try to guess how. So first we need to import functions. Functions is our backend, which has this getTodos function and this writeTodos function. The getTodos function gives us a list of the to-dos which are located in todos.txt. So what we do now is, on top here we can get the to-dos in a variable equal to functions.getTodos, and that should give us a list in to-dos. So then we iterate for to-do in to-dos, and we create a checkbox where we provide the to-do string as the label of the checkbox. Go back to your script, refresh it, and there we go. Those are the to-dos. Now, for now, nothing happens when we click those text boxes, but we will fix that. Let's also finish the graphical interface, and then we think about the functionality part. So what I mean by that is that we also need to add this text box down here, and then we think about interactivity and functionality. So st.text input and refresh, and that should place this text box here. This empty string here is the label argument actually, and if you want a value you can write one. For example, enter a to-do like that, go to refresh, and you see that this label has been added on top of this text box, text input box. So if you want that, you can leave it, otherwise just provide an empty string, because this is a required argument, so you have to provide this first argument. And if you want a placeholder, there we go. So add new to do is now a placeholder. So it's like a hint which helps the user know what this box is about. So you can enter to-dos there, you can press enter, and for now nothing happens, but we will work on that later. So that's our interface. Now, in the next video we will work on the interactivity of the app so that it actually works, but in this video I also want to explain you how Streamlit actually works. So you saw that it's enough to just call these functions, and the simple action of calling those functions generates those components on your web app. So as you see, the order matters here. So if you write the title function here on top, the title component will also show here on top, which means if you put it somewhere else, like here, you reload, the title will be added in here. So I hope that's clear. Let me undo this change. And so the same goes for all the functions like stwrite, stcheckbox, etc. The next important thing you need to realize is that when the user reloads the app, so when they do a Control R or Command R, or they press that button, or when they visit your URL, what happens is that the Python code is executed. For example, let me prove that to you by printing something here, hello, and we will see on the command line what's going to happen. So let's go back to our code, refresh, and hello is printed out in here, as you see. So anytime you refresh the page, hello is printed out. So that means the script is actually executed from top to bottom with any load of the page. Now it's important to note that the web app, your web app, when it's public, it can have many users at the same time or at different times. And you should know that each user session is separate from other user sessions. That means when you refresh your page somewhere in India and someone else refreshes the page somewhere in New York at the same time or at different times, the script is executed separately for each of those users. So when we deploy the app somewhere on a web server, that means that CPU of the web server is going to handle those requests. And it's important that if your web app has lots of visitors, it's important to have sufficient hardware, so RAM and CPU, to handle many users. Nowadays there are good options which are scalable, so you can start with less CPU and RAM, and then as you see that your web app is becoming popular, you can increase, you can upgrade to more RAM and CPU on your web server where your app is going to be hosted. For now though, the app is hosted on our computer, so performance is not an issue for now. And that's about Streamlit in a nutshell. In the next video you'll see how to add interactivity. So see you there. Hey, in this video we are going to implement the feature of adding new to-dos to the to-do items. So when the user enters here a new to-do and they press enter, that new to-do is going to be appended to the list of the to-dos here. First of all, I do recommend you to use this setup when you do web development. So on one side you keep your IDE and on the other you keep your web browser pointing to your web app. This makes web development easier because you can switch back and forth between the two programs easier. And this is also followed by the other recommendation, which is how long your lines should be. So your lines should be not more than 79 characters long, because if they were longer, then in most computers you cannot see the complete lines in your IDE when you have this half window setup. So those are my two recommendations, and also general programming recommendations. They are not mine. So how can we add this new to-do to the list? Well, first of all, though, I do suggest you to go to todos.txt, and if the cursor is somewhere here, you want to press enter to put the cursor in here so that new to-dos are added in new lines instead of appended to the last to-do. So make sure the cursor is here and close todos.txt. And I'll do a commit because I forgot to commit in the last video. Create a static web interface. So I'm changing todos.txt and web.py. these were the changes I commit now. Right, and then I continue with more code. So that's functions.py and that's web.py. To connect this text box with some actions, we need to add an onChange argument to text input. This will be equal to a callback function. A callback function is nothing more but a custom function which we will create now. For example, add to do, so that's the name of the function, and then we go on top of the code just here and we create a define add to do function. What this function should do now is, first the function should get the value that the user enters there, and then should add that value to the list of the to-do items. So first let's see how we can get that value. To be able to get that value, we first need to add like an ID to this text input widget. For example, we can call this new to do. So that's a key that identifies this widget. Now we can refer to that widget from here. Create a variable new to do or just to do. So this is a local variable. We will place that string in that local variable. And to get that string, we need to refer to st.sessionState. Use that syntax and then provide here the key of the text input widget, like that. I'll explain you what st.sessionState is. So first let me print out the to do just to make sure that we are getting that correctly, and go to the script, refresh, press enter. Expand the terminal, so when we press enter, the script was executed. And also the add to do function was called. So you see that we got clean the bag and also hello. So we got clean the bag because the function was called, but also we got hello because the entire script is also executed. So when the user presses enter here, when they do some actions, so they press a button, they press enter on the text box, the entire script is executed. But also again, the callback function is called. Let's try that again. Clean the bag again, press enter, and that's what we get. Clean the bag again and hello. So clean the bag again is stored in the to-do variable. Now session state is some kind of dictionary. If you want to see it, you can simply add it here at the bottom, session state. So I'm not using a print function here, I'll render this on the web app. So if I refresh the page, this is what we've got. So this is st.sessionState. It's some sort of dictionary. It's not exactly a dictionary type, but it looks like a dictionary. It's actually a session state type, a very specific object type of Streamlit. And this session state will contain pairs of data that the user enters in your app. So for example, if they enter hello here and they press enter, then this dictionary is updated. So that's a key new to do, and that's a value associated to that key. So that allows us to extract that hello using that. So that's like the dictionary syntax where we call the key of that pair and we get the value of the pair. So we store the value in to do. Right, I'll leave the session state here as I'm developing the program because it helps me see what's going on, and then I can remove it before I publish the app for users. Now, what can we do with this to do? Well, we can append it, todos.append, but we need this declaration of todos variable on top here, and then we have access to that variable in here because it was declared before it is being used. So todos.append to do, we add that new to do to the list, and then functions.write todos. So we use the functions write todos function. That means the updated to-dos, so we update the to-dos list in here, and then we write that updated to-dos in the todos.txt file. So the todos.txt file is going to be updated when the user presses enter here. So when they press enter, add to do is called, and therefore the new to-dos, the updated to-dos are going to be written in todos.txt file. So let's refresh the page now, add here clean the bag, press enter. Functions has no attribute right. Yeah, it should be write to-dos. Sorry about that. Write to-dos, that's the correct name of the function. Like that. Let's refresh the page again, the web app. Clean the bag. Press enter, and clean the bag is added to the list of the to-do items. How did it work exactly? Well, as I told you, when the user presses enter here, the function is called and then the script is executed. So first the function is called, as you saw here, clean the bag, we got that print from the function, and then hello. So the function is executed first, and that updates the todos.txt file. That means then when these lines are executed, in here, this loop will iterate in the updated to-dos, which contains the new item. Therefore, this checkbox will also be added to the list of checkboxes. So that's how it works. Let's add a new to-do. Again, fix the computer, press enter. Now the new to-do is added next to this item. To fix that, you want to add here a \n symbol, which will create a break line. So let's try again now. Refresh the page, fix the lamp, press enter. It's still added to that because the \, is after fix the lamp. So, but if I do it for another time, help the neighbor, press enter, that is added as a new line. Get paper, press enter, everything is now added as a new line. There is one last feature we need to add to the app, and that is completing to-do items. So when the user presses the checkbox of an item, that item should be deleted from the list here and also from the list of to-dos.txt file content in here. We will implement that in the next video. So let's close this video, let's commit the changes, commit. So what did we do? What changes did we do? Well, that was adding new items. Implement, add new to-do items feature and commit the changes. With that, I'll see you in the next video. See you there. Hi, in this video we will implement the complete to-do feature. So when the user checks one to-do item, that to-do item should be removed from this list and also from the list of to-dos.txt items. So let's implement this feature. The way we should handle this is by using the session state object. Now, you see that session state is currently displaying only this widget. So session state is a dictionary, contains the widget's information. So why is session state not displaying the information about these other widgets, such as the checkboxes? The answer is that the checkboxes don't have a key argument yet, but the text input box does have one. You see here key, and you see that the value of the key is here, new to do, and that key is associated with a value which is an empty string for now, but if the user enters something here, such as clean the bag, press enter, that value is updated in here. Now, to be able to manipulate these to-do items should also be part of the session state object. Therefore, we need to add a key to the checkboxes. So in the loop, in the for loop, for to-do in to-dos, st checkbox to do, you want to say key is equal to, and you want to specify a unique key for each to do. So if you just say hello here and you refresh, you're going to see only one pair, because basically all the checkboxes got the same key, hello. So you want to have that key dynamic. Perhaps you want to provide the name of the to-do as a key. So each to-do is going to have a different key. So change that to to-do, refresh the page, and there we go. So now we have a dictionary of multiple pairs. The first pair represents the text box in here, and then each other pair represents one of the checkboxes. So for example, return the books to the library, and it's set to false. So if I go to return the books to the library and I check it, now return the books to the library, the value is changed to true. Now we can make use of that information. So now we know we have control of what the user is doing. So if the user is doing something on the front end, that is reflected in the back end. So we can get that true value using that session state object. So that's how we know what the user is doing. So here now, we first need to store this in a variable. So we want to store each checkbox in a variable, and that allows us to check if checkbox. So if the checkbox is checked, basically what this checks is that, so this only happens when the user checks a checkbox. So I would suggest you to uncheck these. We get an error because the script has not been completed yet, so we have this indentation error. That's fine. So make sure everything is unchecked, and then here we want to print out the checkbox. And then go to the page, refresh it, and try to check a checkbox, for example, fix the floor. Now in the command line, you should see true printed out, so checkbox was true. However, we don't know which of the checkboxes was actually checked. So what we can now do is, instead of printing out the checkbox, we can remove the selected to-do from the todos.txt file using todos.pop, and then you provide the index of the to-do item, but we don't have the index. For that we can do for index to-do in enumerate to-dos. So that is, just to refresh your memory, that is the equivalent of doing if A is a list of item 1, item 2, and so on, then when you do for index to do in enumerate A, then index is going to be the index of each of the items there, and to do is going to contain the items itself, right? So we remove the to do for which the checkbox was checked from the list, and then we write the new list in the functions dot write to-dos function. So that should write the updated to-dos with that to-do removed. It should write it to todos.txt. And we also should delete st session state. We should delete the to-do also from session state dictionary. So you can provide the to-do there, the key, so that should delete the pair that is selected. So if the user selects fix the floor, then this pair should be deleted from session state dictionary. And finally, you want to apply st.experimental rerun function to rerun the code, because this is needed for checkboxes. When you're watching this video, probably you just need to write rerun instead of experimental rerun. So try to do whatever works. And go to the page, refresh it. Let's try to complete by grocery. We've got this error. So errors are also displayed here on the web page. Experimental rerun. I have a typo here. Yeah, so let's refresh again. I'll return the books to the library, press that, and return the books to the library is deleted from the list. Print the pictures, also fix the floor, clean the bag. So all these should have also been deleted from todos.txt. Yeah, so 4 items here, 4 items in here as well. You can also see that the state session dictionary is also updated. So we can select that. That is deleted from the dictionary. And that's a complete code. So it's only 30 lines of Python code. Well, maybe 26, because we don't need those two last lines. So refresh again, and that's a complete code. So in only 26 lines of code, you can create a web app with Python. In today's programming tools video, we will work on deployment. So you learn what deployment is, and we will deploy this app so that everyone can visit the app using a public URL. So you will have your app online on a live server. Thanks a lot, see you later. Hi, in this video you will learn how to deploy your Streamlit apps on a live server. So by the end of this video, everyone will be able to visit your web app through a public URL, which will be generated automatically. So let's begin. The requirement is that you should have your Streamlit app on a standalone PyCharm project. What I mean by that is you shouldn't have any other files which are not related to your web app. For example, we have this GUI.py, which creates a desktop graphical user interface. Now that is unrelated to the web app. The files we need are functions.py and web.py and also todos.txt. Therefore, before you deploy something, you should have that app only in the project on your IDE. Therefore, I'm going to go to File and create a new project. I'll name this Web App 1 and make sure this new environment using virtual env is selected and press on Create. So that will create a new project and a new virtual environment. So I'll press on New Window. If you press on this window, the existing window will be closed. So now I need that existing window because I need to copy functions.py, web.py and todos.txt. Copy them, go here, delete that default main.py file, and in the project directory you want to select there and paste those files. Right, so now I have web.py, functions.py and todos.txt. The next thing we want to do is we want to install the needed libraries. So I can just hover my mouse here and this will show up, and then I can go to install package Streamlit. Otherwise, you can use the Python packages interface here to search for Streamlit and to search and install the other packages as well, which are, yeah, that's it, only Streamlit. So wait for the installation to finish. And please note that Streamlit takes a while to install. And Streamlit was installed successfully on my computer. Now the next step is, of course, you want to try out if the app is working fine. So open the terminal, make sure this venv in parentheses is there. If it's not, there is some problem with your project on PyCharm. So Streamlit run web.py, press enter. check the localhost URL and see if it's working. Yeah, it's working well. Yeah, so the app is working well. We can stop it with Control-C in the terminal here. And the next step is to create a requirements.txt file. I'll explain you what that is. To create that file, you want to do pip freeze greater than, and then you say requirements.txt. Be careful with the typos. This has to be exactly as you see it here. So don't use capital letters. requirements.txt. Press enter and that will generate a requirements.txt file here in the project directory. You may need to reload it with that reload from disk button. And there we go. So what is requirements.txt? This is a file which will be uploaded to the server where we host this web app. So that server should know all the Python libraries the server needs to install in order to run the web app correctly. So the server has Python installed. And even though it does have Python installed, it doesn't have all the packages available, third-party packages. So you have to tell that server what packages your app needs to run correctly. And these are the packages that our app uses. So we installed Streamlit only, but Streamlit has installed some dependencies, so other packages which Streamlit needs to run correctly. So all those packages together with their versions are listed in here. So the server will get this file and it will install all these packages and then run our app using the Python installed on that server, and that Python is going to have these packages. I hope that's clear. So the command here, what it does is it uses pip freeze, and then basically if you do just pip freeze, you get the list of those packages in the command line. But by doing that, you write those package names and their versions to this requirements.txt file. So that's it. Next thing to do is we need to upload our project to GitHub. So for that you first need to enable version control. We're using Git. Press OK. Then you want to go to your GitHub account and go to new repository. Give a name for your repository, such as my to-do app. Make it public or private, whatever you prefer. And press on Create Repository. Then you want to copy that link there. That's the link to your repository. Go to Git, Manage Remotes, and plus, and add that URL that you copied in there. Press OK. OK again. And then you want to commit first. Make sure that the files are added. So you want to go to Project. You want to make sure that you add all the required files. Before we want to create a .git ignore file. Press enter. You can add it or add it later. I'll just cancel for now. It's fine either way. So here we want to ignore the vent folder. We don't want it to be uploaded. And also a hidden.idea folder. And that's it. Now I want to select git ignore functions.py requirements todos.txt, web.py, right click, go to Git and add those files. And then we want to commit, and these are the files that are to be committed. Initial commit as a commit message, press on commit, and then push those changes to GitHub. Push. And I get this message that the master was pushed to origin master. So if I reload this page, I should see all the files. Now we're ready to synchronize GitHub with the server where we're hosting our web app. To do that, you can again go to the terminal and run the app with streamlit run webapp.py. You want to go to localhost, and if you go to this button here, menu button, and you can go to deploy this app. You can ignore this message, continue anyway. And that should open share.streamlit.io, that page. If it's not opening at all, you may need to turn off your VPN. And if you don't see this page, you may see another page where you need to sign up for an account on share.streamlit.io and then sign in. And after you sign in, maybe you need to do that again. So deploy this app, and that should take you to this page. So that should reflect that path here. In my case, it's that my to-do app. So make sure it's the same for you. Yeah, so the branch is master by default. You can check that. In here, it's master in my case. And the main file path is web.py. You can remove that to get rid of that warning. So Ardit Sulce teaching / my to do app without the .git part. So that should reflect your web app. Web.py is the entry point of my app, which is a Python file that we run. And press on deploy. Then wait a while until your app is deployed. And there we go. So this is what Streamlit showed to me. So that's my app deployed, and that's the public URL. So it's share.streamlit.io Ardit Sulce teaching my to-do app / web.py. And it works just fine. If you go to manage app, you should see the logs here. So if you have a problem with your app, you should see some errors here, so try to understand what the exact error is. Maybe you can post your error to the Q&A in the course, so we can help. So with that, that's how you can deploy your web apps on the Streamlit service. So Streamlit gives you both the library to create the web apps, but also this free cloud service. Of course, it is also possible to deploy Streamlit apps on other servers such as DigitalOcean, but the process is a bit more demanding, so the deployment process requires some more steps. With that, I'll thank you for following this video. Thanks a lot, see you later. Hi, welcome to today's code experiments. Before we begin, I want to give you one tip. and that is related to the use of Git. Now in these code experiments videos, we make some changes to the program we have been building. And these are changes which we don't want to keep, we just change something and then we want to go back to how the program was before. So to implement and to achieve that, you have basically two options, at least two options. Either you make a copy of the current file of the program and use the copy to add those code experiments to do the changes, and then you delete that copy and go back to the original file. That is one option. The other option is that you work on this same file, but before you make the first change, you want to make sure that everything has been committed with Git. So this assumes you are using Git in your application. So to make sure that everything has been committed and you can go ahead and do changes in your code, you can see if you have any file name with a red color, a blue color, or a green color. In my case, all these file names are in white. That means all of them has been committed. The then folder is in yellow because that is an ignored folder, so you shouldn't worry about that color. In git.gitignore I have this then folder. So venv is not included in the Git tracking. If you have a file which is in red color, then you should click over that file and then go to Git and then go to add that file to the repository. And then the file color will change to blue. Then, if you have any blue files in here, which happens also when you have made a change which has not been committed. For example, I just entered a new breakline here. So this file now, web.py, has not been committed to Git. So if you want to keep all the files in line with Git and you can go ahead and make other changes, then you want to go to the commit button, and then you want to amend the commit, or you can uncheck that button and write a new commit message here. But since I didn't actually do any changes, so this was just a break line, or maybe in your case could be something else insignificant, then you want to amend that commit to the same initial commit. So you press that amend button and then press on amend commit. That's it. If you go to project, you'll not have any files in other colors other than white. And then you can push the changes or not, whatever you prefer. Or you can do it later. Right, so now we can go ahead and do some experiments, and then we can reset the code as it was at this point now, at this stage, because we do have a commit now for this stage, so we can go back to that commit. Alright, so let's start with the first experiment. The first thing I wanted to show you is that the order of the widgets, the components, matter. So I wanted you to make sure you know that. So for example, if I cut the text input widget and I paste it before I start the loop of checkboxes in here, and then I run the code, Streamlit run web.py is the file, which is now blue because I just made a change and that change has not been committed, so blue means the change was not committed yet. So visit localhost. Now you see that add new to do is on top of the checkboxes. So that's the first change I wanted to make. The second experiment I wanted to show you is if we go to the write method and then you go to productivity, for example, and then you wrap productivity around these B tags with these symbols, and then at the end of productivity you say that B, and then you add another argument which is unsafe allow HTML, which I'm going to provide in a new line, which is equal to true, and you go to the page and refresh. You're going to see that productivity now is in bold. So what I just did here is I provided HTML instead of a plain string. And with that argument, I told Python to actually render HTML as HTML because these tags are HTML tags. So HTML language, they convert this text to bold. You see here. And if you didn't have this unsafe allow HTML set to true, by default this is set to false. So if you don't provide that, that means the argument is set to false. So if I refresh now, you'll see the tags as plain text. So to wrap it up, if you want to have different fonts and different styles for your text, you can use HTML. So HTML is only allowed for the write method. The title and the subheader don't have HTML enabled because they are already set to a certain fixed font. So these are like big fonts. And of course you can also make write this text in the same font. So basically you apply h1 tags, h1 like that, so with this slash, and notice that the tags should be inside the quotes. So this is a string. Python just knows that this is a string, but Streamlit interprets it as HTML when you say unsafe allow HTML set to true. So go there, and now you see that this has been converted to a bigger font. However, you don't need to do this because you can just use title if you want that big font. You don't have to use HTML. So I'm going to delete the h1 tags and only keep the bold tags. Two more experiments I want to try is, the first one is st.setPageConfig. This is a method which allows you to configure the page. You can set the argument layout to wide, and let's refresh the page to see how it will change. So you see that now the horizontal length of the web page expands to the entire width of the browser, and it's still responsive. So you see that the button here, the text box, is shrinking when we shrink the web page. So that will also work for mobile devices. Right, the last experiment is how to have multiple pages for your web apps. And that is actually very, very easy. All you have to do is go to the root directory of your project where you have the main web.py file, and here you want to create a new folder. Name it pages. So pages, exactly pages, don't change the name. And then inside that folder you add pages. So these are Python files. For example, about.py. I'll not add it to Git because this is just an experiment, so let's leave the page there. In red, it means it was not added to Git. Import Streamlit SST. ST, that's right, hello, just a hello page. And then if you just go to your browser, you refresh, and you have these two pages. So you go to About, you see the other page. So this sidebar here was generated automatically. The names of the pages reflect the names of your files. So web.py with a lowercase w and about.py with an uppercase A. So if you want web, if you want to name it, for example, home.py, that name will reflect in here as well. But the first time you refresh it, you have lost the execution here, because now you need to press Ctrl+C to interrupt it, and then the upper arrow key, and then you want to change home.py. That's why it doesn't work, because the name changed to home.py. That's the entry point of the app now, home.py. Go again here, refresh, and that is home, and that is about. So that's the list of experiments I wanted to try for today. Lastly, if I don't want these changes to happen, so I just did some experiments, I want to go back to how the program was before, so I go to Git, and then I go to the last commit, I right click, I go to reset current branch to here, I go to hard, reset, go to the root directory, right click, reload from disk, and what you'll get is the files as they were before we did the changes. So for example, text input is at the end of the widgets as it was before. The pages was not added to the Git tracking, so they are still here, and you can delete them manually if you don't want them on the page. Otherwise, about will show on the website. So I'm going to delete that as well. We're going to use multiple pages later on, again when we create another app, a very interesting one. So delete that, and that was about code experiments for today. Thanks a lot, see you later. Earlier today we deployed our Streamlit app to Streamlit Cloud. So that was free to do, you don't have to pay for the service. However, you have limitations, so that's an integrated platform. That's one of the deployment options we want to talk about today. And I also want to talk about more powerful options. And also then I'll show you how to deploy your app to Heroku, which is a paid service. But it's more powerful, it lets you scale your app. So with Streamlit Cloud, which we did already, you cannot scale your app, meaning that if you have more visitors coming to your app and you need more CPU, but Streamlit doesn't allow you that. That's why we have other options. So Streamlit Cloud was an integrated platform. It's easy, but it's limited. Let's go with the second option. Platform as a Service, also known for short as PaaS. And some platforms, some good platforms to mention are Heroku, Python Anywhere, Google App Engine, and AWS. So these are services, and we are going to use Heroku in this video. So we're going to deploy our app to Heroku so you'll understand exactly what a PaaS is. Basically, they have servers which they offer to you through a web interface. So it allows you to use those servers in an easy fashion. That means you don't have to think about admin operations, so you don't have to maintain those servers. So that means you can focus on development, you can focus on coding and maintaining your code base because you are a programmer, so you want to spend your time on what you do best. And PaaS are usually the best option. And I'll try to compare them with other options. So the next option is IaaS, Infrastructure as a Service. These are also services, they allow you to use their servers, but the interface is a bit harder to use. IaaS services tend to have more flexibility and they also tend to be cheaper than PaaS. However, again, with PaaS you focus on development. You don't have to think about maintaining these operating systems. Now, with IaaS, all you have to do though is maintain the operating system. But with physical servers, which is the other next option, you have to maintain the operating system, but also the physical servers themselves. For example, I used to work in a company which managed GPS data, lots of them. And the company, we had these physical servers in a room. And one day the power went off, and even though the servers had backup power, the room cooling system itself didn't have backup power. Therefore, the cooling system went off and therefore the servers became very hot. They had to turn off automatically. So that makes this option the hardest because you have to maintain the physical components of those servers. And these ones in here, you don't have to think about anything physical. AWS offers both PaaS and IaaS, although I do recommend to use DigitalOcean if you go for IaaS because they have a better pricing system. A friend of mine who has an AI company for agriculture, he had to pay 20k overnight because a hacker was able to hack to his AWS and they loaded some heavy processes which consumed a lot of resources. So my friend had to pay for those resources that he consumed to Amazon. So AWS is part of Amazon. In conclusion, I do recommend PaaS, and now we're going to use Heroku. So let's go over to our PyCharm project. So that's my to-do app, the web app, and we are going to deploy it on Heroku. Now, if you go to your browser and you go to the heroku.com website, and then you want to sign up for an account, and then you want to log in with that username and password, and you're going to see this dashboard on the main page. So just here. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Heroku is not free. So the first thing you have to do is you want to go to this icon, and then you want to go to account settings, and then you want to go to the billing sections and add your credit card there. Once you do that, you can come back to this dashboard. On the dashboard, you want to create a new app. So let's create a new app. Name it whatever you want, like To-Do app, and choose a region. Oh, To-Do app is not available, so let's try my To-Do app 10. Yeah, that's available. So think about a name, because that is going to be the name on the public URL. Your URL is going to be something like my todoapp10.herokuapp.com. More about that later. Now the region here specifies the region where your app will be stored, will be served. So the files are going to be uploaded somewhere. So Heroku does have servers in United States and Europe. Now, if you expect that most of your users would be in United States, then it makes sense to choose United States here, because that means your app will be served slightly faster to those users in United States and maybe a bit slower for European users. But if you expect to have users from both United States and India, perhaps Europe is a better option. It would be like a good middle ground because it's between United States and India. So I'll choose Europe and press on Create App. Now we have these three options to deploy our app. One is Heroku Git, and the preferred method for me and for many programmers is GitHub. So with GitHub, when you click here for the first time, you will get a window perhaps, which is asking you to log into GitHub to authenticate yourself so that Heroku has access to your repository. So down here now, after I have authenticated myself, I've logged into GitHub, I can search for repository names of my GitHub account. So here I have this my to-do repository. I can search for it. Yeah, that's my repository. So I can press connect. Now, if you don't have a repository, that means you didn't follow me in the previous videos when we created a repository in the previous days. So if that's the case, if you don't have a repository, so that's my repository. If you don't have one, you need to create one in here, new repository. And then you want to go to your project and make sure that the repository is in manage remotes. So this is the repository in my case. So that file is in here. So I go over in here and I want to connect this repository, which is where my project is in GitHub. And it says connected. The next option is asking you if you want to enable automatic deploys. What is an automatic deployment? Well, let's say that you are developing your program, so perhaps you add a new feature, you add some code here, and then if you commit your code to Git, and then if you push your code to GitHub, then Heroku is going to get the GitHub changes automatically. So once you push your code to GitHub, your app will be updated, so users will see the updated version of your app, will see the new feature that you added. So I do recommend to enable automatic deploys. And then don't press this deploy branch button just yet, because we need to go to our project here and we need to add some configuration files. So in my computer here, I have these two files, procfile and setup.sh file. You can find these two files attached in the lecture resources in this lecture. So please copy those files and paste them in the directory where your Python files are, which normally is the root directory. So I'll click here and go to paste and press OK. And then this will ask you if you want to add the files to Git. Press add. If it didn't ask you, then you want to select the files, that file and that one, and right click and then go to Git and go to add them manually. Now let me explain you what these two files are for. Let's start with setup.sh. This is a shell script. So it has three parts actually. This one here is a command which will create a directory. So all actually are commands, and these commands are going to be executed on the server, on the Heroku servers. So we will upload these to GitHub as well, and then Heroku will get those two files. So this will create a new directory, and then in here we specify the email. If you want, you can change this to your own email address, but that doesn't matter. So you can leave it here. I'll just leave it like that. Then in here we create a credentials.toml file. This is just a text file where we're going to store that email address. So that is going to be created inside this folder, which was created up here. So Linux, which is the operating system of the server that Heroku uses, will run this command. So it will create files and folders, and then in here we specify the port. You don't have to think about that either. And then we write those in this other configuration file as well. So those are written in that configuration file, and those here are written in that configuration file. That's about this sh file. And then procfile. So don't change the names of these files. This is very important. Procfile has to be with a capital P, so it is just a file without any extension. This now tells Heroku how to run our web app. So what this will do actually is it will first execute this setup.sh file, and this file will execute these, as I explained, And then we will execute the Streamlit run web.py command, which is the same command that I use to execute here when I want to run my app. Now be careful here. In my case, my main file, which is the file I run, which is this one, is named web.py. So if your file is named differently, you want to change that to the name of your file. Lastly, there's another file you need, and that is the requirements.txt file. We did create this file earlier, so I showed you how to generate this file. So if you don't have that file, again, you can generate it with pip freeze requirements.txt. However, before you execute this, you should first install Streamlit with pip install Streamlit if you haven't done so yet. So I have installed both Streamlit. As you can see, I don't have a red underline under Streamlit, so Streamlit is installed. Requirements.txt is here. So all these packages now are going to be installed by the server, by the Heroku server. So Heroku needs these three configuration files and also the actual Python files and maybe associated txt files such as todos.txt. So let's now commit the changes, which is this proc file, the setup.sh file, and perhaps in my case this is the todos.txt file. Perhaps in your case this is not listed here. Anyway, it's fine. It is important that proc file and setup.sh are here. So you want to say here add files, add configuration files, and commit. Then you want to push the changes to GitHub. So that is going to upload these three files to my GitHub repository. So if I refresh this page now, we're going to see that proc file and setup.sh are here. Then I can go back to Heroku and then I can finally deploy the branch. Now this is the name of the branch, is master. You can see here as well it's master. So they have to be the same branches. Just before you deploy though, you want to make sure the app is running smoothly. So perhaps it's a good idea to do Streamlit run web.py and see if the app is fine. It looks fine. So now we're ready to finally press that deploy branch button. And you should see now the logs of the server. So the server is now deploying your app. It says that a Python app was detected. So Heroku is a platform as a service. It supports different programming languages. Python is one of them. Now you see here installing requirements with pip. So Heroku found that requirements.txt file and it is installing all those packages using pip. So pip is installed in the Heroku servers. So now pip installs those requirements. Proc file declares the type, so this is a web app. You remember that's web in here, that one. And then we have more, it's compressing packages. Now it's launching and released version 4. So that's the path to my app. Now you can copy that path, go to a browser tab, and if you try to refresh, perhaps the first time it doesn't show up, so try to refresh after a few seconds, and now this is my app. So I can add new to-dos and I can complete them. And that was how to deploy web apps on Heroku. That is a public URL, so you can give it to anyone and they can use it. If your app will become very popular, then Heroku might send you an email telling you that the resources are being exceeded, so you might have to upgrade to a more expensive plan on Heroku, which gives you more resources such as CPU and RAM, so your apps can handle more traffic. Yeah, with that, thanks a lot, and I'll see you later.